Get ready, because today we're going to talk about the best scene from every Star Wars movie. Last week I did a video on the worst scene in every movie, and in an effort to bring balance to the Force, today we're going to look at the good stuff. We'll go from movie to movie in order of release, I'll point out each scene, and I'll explain why I believe it's the best. First up is A New Hope, and this movie is packed with iconic scenes. Vader boarding Leia's transport ship, Luke staring out at the double suns, Alderaan exploding, the Death Star attack, the trench run. There are so many winners here. For me though, I gotta go with the prison escape because this is the scene that solidifies the main cast as legendary. Luke, Han, Chewie, and Leia each play a unique role here, and despite barely knowing each other, they have to band together against the Empire. And everything about this scene is pure fun. Luke comes up with a plan to wear stormtrooper disguises, Han and Chewie have to improvise when things go wrong, then we get some action, some humor, and then moments after being rescued, Leia takes charge and creates an escape route, which sets up the trash compactor scene where 3PO and R2 get to shine as well. I'm sure many people will say that the trench run is the best scene, and I agree it's excellent, but the prison escape, at least in my opinion, is the moment when Star Wars truly becomes Star Wars. Next up is Empire Strikes Back, and I'm not even going to bother trying to create suspense here. There's only one serious choice, and it's the I Am Your Father scene. This is the definitive Star Wars scene, it's the most iconic plot twist in film history, and no matter how many times I watch it, it sends a chill through me. The scene opens with Luke being pushed to his physical limits during his first lightsaber duel. He's losing the battle, he's getting backed into a corner, then Vader chops off his hand. Luke retreats to a ledge, and that's when Darth Vader pushes him to his emotional limits.
Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me you killed him.
No. I am your father.
After taking in the news, Luke faces a brutal dilemma, and he ultimately defines himself by choosing apparent death over the dark side. Now we got Return of the Jedi. I feel like most people would say that the best scene is Vader killing Palpatine, but for my money, it's when Luke attacks Palpatine. Here's why. Luke enters the throne room believing he can get his father to change, and that belief gets tested when Emperor Palpatine reveals that Luke's friends have fallen into a trap. The Emperor insists that his friends will continue dying until Luke gives in to his hatred and embraces the dark side. This is a compelling dilemma where Luke has to choose between the two things he values most: the safety of his friends and the peaceful way of the Jedi. Initially, Luke resists the temptation, but as the rebels suffer more casualties, he grows weaker and weaker until he finally gives in. And I love that he gives in. It's a human moment, and it's a powerful one as he grabs his lightsaber and attacks the Emperor. Then the best part of the scene happens. Vader interferes. In this single moment, there's a lot of complexity going on, because not only is Vader protecting his master from death, but in that same moment, he's also protecting Luke from the dark side. Vader is torn in two different directions, and before long, he'll have to make a final choice. That wraps up the original trilogy, which means it's prequel time. Now, Phantom Menace only has two standout scenes: the pod race and the Darth Maul fight. The pod race is fun, but useless from a storytelling standpoint, so we gotta pick a scene from the lightsaber battle, and I'm gonna say that the best scene is when Qui-Gon is defeated. First off, I love the setup here. The early part of the fight is undeniably awesome. You have two Jedi versus a Sith, it's stunning to watch, it creates powerful momentum, then all three combatants get separated by force fields. This is where it gets interesting. Qui-Gon meditates while Maul paces around, letting his hatred flow, and once the battle resumes, it's one-on-one, and Obi-Wan rushes in to help, but he can't get there in time. What makes this scene great is the fact that Obi-Wan can do nothing but watch. It creates this sense of dread because we know Maul is strong enough to take on two Jedi at once, and now Qui-Gon is at a severe disadvantage. We root for him to hang on long enough for Obi-Wan to rejoin the battle, and the tension builds and builds until Maul delivers the killing blow. Obi-Wan then yells out in horror, and now he has to find a way to keep his emotions in check and avenge his master. Next, we have Attack of the Clones. Most of the best scenes here come during the final 45 minutes when the movie sparks to life, and the best one is the duel with Count Dooku. This lightsaber battle gets forgotten, mainly because it doesn't have the spectacle or stakes of the other prequel fights, but I love it for all the little character moments along the way. Anakin opens the battle by giving in to his emotions and running at a Sith Lord. He gets burned, then Obi-Wan is left to fight Qui-Gon's master, and we have a scenario where Obi-Wan is about to die in the same way that Qui-Gon did. That's when Anakin jumps in to save his master's life in a moment that echoes Return of the Jedi, and then he and Dooku fight one-on-one before Dooku chops off Anakin's arm. I love how this scene highlights where Anakin is on his journey. His emotions control him, he doesn't listen to Obi-Wan, and he's not powerful enough to defeat an experienced Sith Lord. It shows what a mess Anakin is, and how his potential for greatness doesn't make him great. Moving on to Revenge of the Sith, there are a few standout scenes here, but for me, the clear winner is when Palpatine tells his troops to execute Order 66. The prequel trilogy builds toward this tragic moment, and despite all the stumbles and missteps along the way, this scene lands with heavy emotional impact as the Jedi are ousted from power. Once Anakin becomes a Sith Lord, it sends shockwaves across the galaxy. It's a chilling scene that shows the impact of an individual's choices, and one by one, Jedi are betrayed by their trusted allies. There's minimal dialogue here, which is a good thing, and Yoda has a great moment at the end when he beheads his attackers right before they can kill him. Obviously, we know that Yoda's not going to die here, but the fact that he fights back adds another dimension to this scene by injecting a moment of hope. Next up is the Clone Wars, and this was a tough pick because there aren't any real standout scenes here. One that has stuck with me is when Anakin learns he has to train Ahsoka. Prior to this scene, Obi-Wan raves about getting a new Padawan of his own, while Anakin groans at the thought of slowing down to mentor someone. Then they meet Ahsoka, who initially appears to be Obi-Wan's new Padawan, before she reveals that Yoda has actually assigned her to Anakin. Anakin then freaks out, and his reaction is something we don't see in the other prequels. In those movies, he usually is either saying unbearable things to Padme or yelling unbearable things at Obi-Wan, but here, however, Anakin shies away from the idea of training someone, and it shows a different side of his character while allowing Obi-Wan to poke some fun at him. Alright, now, on to the Disney movies. And we'll start, of course, with Force Awakens. The best scene is when Finn and Poe escape the Empire. I mean, the First Order. If you remember, in the opening scene, Poe is captured while Finn becomes horrified by the killings that take place. This motivates Finn to defect from the First Order, and he decides to rescue Poe. Everything about their escape is classic Star Wars fun, and the chemistry between these two is just off the charts.
Alright, we gotta take out as many of these cannons as we can, but we're not gonna get very far. Alright, I'm gonna get us in position. Just stay sharp.
Did you see that?
Hey, what's your name?
FN2187.
What? Finn, I'm gonna call you Finn, is that alright?
Finn. Yeah. Finn, I like that. I like that. I'm Poe Dameron.
Good to meet you, Poe. Good to meet you too, Finn.
I love how this scene brings both characters to life. Finn risks everything to save Poe, then Poe gives Finn an actual name, and the two celebrate some small victories like they're brothers before being shot down together. Every time I watch this scene, I can't help but wish that the sequel trilogy had explored their friendship more. The chemistry was there, and episodes 8 and 9 could have challenged their bond and explored their differences. But sadly, Finn and Poe were left to rot away in those final two movies. Next up is Rogue One, and for its best scene, I considered the prologue, which is pretty tense, and I also considered different scenes throughout the final battle, but I gotta go with the obvious choice here and pick Darth Vader's rampage. Not only is it a mesmerizing visual spectacle, but it's a cold-blooded portrayal of Vader, and we never got enough of this in the original trilogy. Aside from him choking some people, he doesn't really do many evil things. And while Anakin makes up for that in Episode 3, the Darth Vader we know always seemed tame compared to his reputation. But then you have this scene in Rogue One that shows how terrifying he can be. And at the same time, it reminds us why the galaxy needed saving in the first place. The Empire was ruthless, and seeing Vader slaughter the rebels here hammers that point home. That brings us to The Last Jedi. Believe it or not, there are actually some good scenes hiding among the horrendous ones. Now, the best scene comes during a space battle when Kylo Ren has an opportunity to shoot Leia. If you remember, Kylo is in his TIE fighter when he attacks a hangar containing resistance ships. Shortly after, he has the chance to shoot and kill Princess Leia, who is, of course, his mother. In the previous movie, Kylo killed his father in order to continue embracing the dark side, and having watched him kill his father, we expect he'll do the same to his mother. However, to our surprise, he hesitates. There's a moment where the two characters sense each other's presence, and the conflict boils across Kylo's face. Not only does he hesitate with his thumbs above the triggers, but after a clear internal struggle, he refuses to murder Leia. It's a strong moment of character development, but unfortunately, it's not enough to protect Leia. Instead, Kylo's wingmen follow through and blast her ship. This tragic outcome speaks to the fact that one good decision does not undo the many bad choices of the past, and the scene delivers strong emotion from start to finish. It's just a shame that it ended up being followed by the infamous Flying Leia routine. Now we move on to Solo. If you remember, Han spends most of the movie trying to obtain special fuel for the crime syndicate Crimson Dawn. After obtaining the fuel, he decides he'd rather give it to a group of rebels, and he cooks up a plan to fool Crimson Dawn. He shares part of the plan with his partner Beckett, who refuses to get involved, and that leaves Han, Chewie, and Kira on their own. Then we get the betrayal scene. Han delivers the goods to Crimson Dawn, but their leader Voss knows the stuff is fake because someone tipped him off. Han blames Kira, but it turns out Beckett leaked the information. Voss then sends his people to attack the rebels and take their fuel, but we then learn that Han anticipated this move and brought the real stuff with him. Unfortunately for Han, however, Beckett shoots a couple guards and takes the stuff for himself. This scene stands out because we see Han's character growth as he outsmarts his enemy. Throughout the movie, Beckett warns him not to trust people, and Han wisely thinks ahead here. There's also some sharp emotion when Han initially accuses Kira, only to find out that she didn't betray him. Then Beckett arrives and betrays everyone, and this sets the stage for the final battles. Finally, we end things with the Rise of Skywalker. This movie is known for having sloppy writing, but if I had to pick a best scene, I'll go with the first one in which Kylo Ren slaughters a bunch of people while tracking down Palpatine. Now, obviously, bringing Palpatine back from death was a bad idea, but aside from that glaring issue, this is a pretty good intro. Kylo Ren is ruthless and driven here, he refuses to get pushed around, he threatens Palpatine, and ultimately he gives in to his desire for power. The scene is stylish and breezy, and it does a great job setting the tone, although unfortunately that tone doesn't last long. Still, if you swapped out Palpatine for any other living Sith Lord, this scene could have been a great way to kick off Episode 9. So I hope this helps. Question of the day, what is the best Star Wars scene in your opinion? And if you say I Am Your Father, come up with a different one because that's just too obvious. But either way, let us know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching. If you want to support the channel, please pick up a copy of any one of my books and be sure to leave reviews on Amazon. The Half Murders is great if you like horror stories. It's about a woman and her daughter who enter a haunted house. They get chopped in half, and for them, the nightmare is only beginning. Also, be sure to check out my other videos, like, share, and subscribe. Maybe support me on Patreon. And as always, remember to keep on writing.